You guys remember Muqtada al-Sadr? He was the founder of the Mahdi army. I'm going to get back to them in a second, but those guys who led 2 insurgencies against the United States. Well, maybe you hadn't heard of Muqtada in a while, but guess what? He just won the elections in Iraq. Muqtada! How's that for a magic trick? All right. So let me go to Reuters to explain. Populist cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, a longtime adversary of the United States, has all but won Iraq's parliamentary election, the Electoral Commission said in a surprise turn of fortune for the Shiite leader. Surprise. Now, I am not overly surprised by it. Don't get me wrong, I didn't predict it. I'm not predicting Iraqi elections. I'll tell you why I'm not surprised. It's because he's a populist. Now, I've got more details on that in a second, but what have I told you? All across the world, whether it's Brexit or it's Corbyn, whether it's Trump or Bernie Sanders, or even in this case, Muqtada al-Sadr, who's a terrible guy in a lot of ways, if you run as a populist, you're more likely to win. It's not rocket science, but here in America, the Democrats and the media insist, no, don't run as a populist. You know what you should do? You should be part of a corrupt system and tell everybody that everything's gonna be okay and that the system is wonderful. Brilliant electoral strategy. It never works anywhere. So now, what did work here and what's the ramifications for Iraq? Reuters explains, in the first election since the Islamic State was defeated in the country, Iran-backed Shiite militia chief Hadi al-Amiri's bloc was in second place, while Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi was once seen as a frontrunner, trailed in third. Now, why did Abadi, the current prime minister, lose? Unlike Abadi, a rare ally of both the United States and Iran, Sadr is an opponent of both countries. So Sadr went with the Iraq first strategy. Meanwhile, the current prime minister, who is beholden to both Iranian corruption and US corruption, said, wow, I love her, US, Iran, aren't they great? And the people of Iraq were like, no, I don't think they're great. You're going down to third. And once again, all the media and everyone else is shocked. The guy who is a populist wound up winning a surprising victory. The guy who said that he would continue the current corrupt system with a shocking loss. If you watch the Young Turks, you're thinking, of course. Everyone else like, oh, what's going on? I can't figure it out. Okay. Now, why are we not happy about this? Sadr has led 2 uprisings against US forces in Iraq and is one of the few Shiite leaders to distance himself from Iran. Well, we're 1 for 1 there. So Iraq is now, has always been in modern history, largely Shiite. It's about 60% Shiite. The rocket scientists, neoconservatives in this country thought, oh no, we'll topple them. And then even though they're largely Shiite, they will not align with Iran. But they did, and they have for quite some time. But at the end of the day, there is some surprising good news out of this. Again, don't celebrate. Muqtada is not a good guy. I'll show you some stuff about him in a second. But there's 2 pieces of good news. One is, well, now the Iraqis went, yeah, we're largely Shiite and so is Iran, but we're our own country and we don't want to be beholden to them and we don't want to be ruled by them. So that's good news. And Iran is no ally of ours and they're run by the Ayatollah, although Muqtada al-Sadr's father was an Ayatollah. Anyway, they wanted their own Ayatollah, but the fact that they're independent from Iran, if all this comes to fruition, is good news. I have more details on that in 1 second too. The other good news is, to be fair, that looks like a democracy. Because if we had rigged it, we would not have put Muqtada al-Sadr in charge. There's no way we would have done that. So they kind of had a real vote, and that's why it was surprising. And in our case in America, our oligarchs choose who they're going to donate the most money to. Those people 9 out of 10 times win the primary. In fact, 95 out of 100 times win the race overall, because the press goes, well, whoever has the most money must be the most legitimate. So our elections are not as honest as this, apparently, which is shocking. Look, I'm actually giving credit here to people. I mean, I'm not sure that I would have expected Iraq to ever have an actual democracy in any way, shape, or form. So I'm coming clean on that, and I'm surprised by that turn of events. Not if you have a real election, will the populists win? Yes, I'm not at all surprised by that. the fact that we had apparently some sort of real election in Iraq, I am a bit surprised by that. So fair is fair and credit where credit is due. Now let's turn to why Iran is not happy about this. Celebrations erupted on the streets of Baghdad after the commission's announcement, with thousands of Sadr supporters singing, chanting, dancing, and setting off fireworks while carrying his picture and waving Iraqi flags. Many chanted, "Iran out." Okay, damn. And then the advisor to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Iran had this quote to say about Sadr: "We will not allow liberals and communists to govern in Iraq." Well, whether you allowed it or not, he seems to have won the election. Okay, but that's fascinating. Now that Muqtada al-Sadr, which is opposed to Iran, has won, they're like, oh, liberal. Muqtada al-Sadr ain't nobody's liberal. Okay, he might be a populist, he might be against corruption, as you're about to see. I guess that in some ways that makes you a progressive if you're against corruption, but in other ways, especially in his adherence to fundamentalist Islam, no, he's not a liberal, he's not a communist. So the Communist Party supported him because they thought, well, all the other choices are so horrific and so corrupt that he's the lesser of those evils, apparently. So now understand, he got the most votes. His party got the most votes. He didn't actually, in a parliamentary system, he has to run for a particular seat. He did not. So if his party forms the majority coalition, he would get to pick the prime minister. He wouldn't be prime minister himself, but he might not even get that opportunity. He got 1.3 million votes, second place 1.2, and third place 1.1 million. So it's possible that second and third place can form a coalition without him. So we'll have to see how that government comes together, and Iran might still have the last word because the guys who came in second and third do owe allegiance to Iran. As I explained, the prime minister also owes some allegiance to the United States. So they might find a way to block him, but they could not find a way to defeat him at the polls. Now, why are we not happy about Muqtada al-Sadr? Well, first, the Trump administration. Sadr has denounced President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and demanded the closure of the American embassy in Baghdad. Now, I don't want our embassy in Baghdad closed, but I understand why he's making that statement. Again, he's a populist, and I think, you know, a lot of countries, Ireland, Belgium, South Africa, agree that decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was a disastrous one. But don't mistake Muqtada al-Sadr for any kind of guy that would be helpful to the West or Western ideas or secularism, etc. So if you want to look, see what the Mahdi army looks like, here's some pictures from the bad old days. They launched 2 insurgencies against U.S. troops and killed a lot of American soldiers. So it was so bad that it was part of the reason why we couldn't have our puppet government run Iraq. The insurgency was too effective, honestly. And so I want a secular government. I don't, all across the world. So this kind of Mahdi army that is more fundamentalist and opposed to the United States is no friend of ours. But that's not how you get elected in Iraq, by being a friend of the US. That wouldn't work, and it didn't work. So, and by the way, I gave credit earlier here to the Bush administration, in essence, because I did not think there would ever be a real democracy in Iraq. On the other hand, they were convinced that if there was a real democracy in Iraq, that Iraqis would obviously support whoever we picked to be prime minister. Another thing that they were preposterously wrong about. Okay, now, so why did Sadr win? Well, Reuters explains, projecting himself as an Iraqi nationalist, Sadr has a zealous following among the young, poor, and dispossessed. I'm telling you, politics is not difficult. If you say that you're going to represent the majority of the country, you might get a majority of the country to vote for you. Now, in a parliamentary system, he didn't get the majority, but he did get the most votes. So there are a lot of poor people in Iraq. If you say to them, I'm going to look out for you, instead of the elite, they're more likely to vote for you. Again, here in America, the media is so warped. They're so part of the elite that they cannot see straight. They think, oh, if you try to represent the poor or the middle class, you'll never win. You should just tell everybody that the system's totally fine. Look at these wonderful Democrats like Hillary Clinton telling everybody everything's A-okay. That is a terrible, terrible electoral strategy. By the way, they're gonna try to do it again in 2020. Hopefully, some of us will stop them. Okay, so now that's one part of it. The other part of it is, it's the corruption, stupid. Run against the corruption. It works all across the world. During the campaign, frustrated Iraqis of all shades complained about their political elites' systematic patronage, bad governance, and corruption, saying they did not receive any benefit of their country's oil wealth. So here in America, our productivity is sky high. I've shown this to you over and over again, and our wages have been stagnant for the last 40 years. So they see the wealth, Americans, the average American, but they don't have the wealth. Why? Because they got robbed. Who did they get robbed by? Yes, by the elites who are the donors to the politicians. In the case of Iraq, they see the oil. There's a lot of wealth in Iraq, but they don't have it. The average man in Iraq doesn't have it. So when a populist, in this case a bad guy, comes along and says, oh yeah, I'll represent the poor and I'll end the corruption, completely unsurprisingly, he wins. Now imagine if there was actually a good guy who was a populist, who actually meant that they would represent the poor and the middle class, and who actually meant that they would end the corruption. Wouldn't that be amazing in any country? But here we are again in Iraq, the same result as all over the world. Run as a populist, run against corruption, and you could nearly guarantee victory. So Muqtada al-Sadr, as bad a guy as he might be, and as much as he might have attacked us, is no one's dummy, and that's why he's back, and now, perhaps, in charge of Iraq. Hey, neocons, did you think you'd be handing Iraq to Muqtada al-Sadr and his Mahdi army? No, you didn't, did you? Brilliantly played. Now, of course, they'd like to do it again in Iran. Buckle up and brace for impact. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.